Elaine knew what she wanted from Paul. She came closer, sat down next to him. The conversation continued but began to turn personal. And then Elaine put her hand right on the hardened, firm. In the quiet, ivy-lined streets of Boston's South End, in a brownstone building older than most marriages, lived a woman named Elaine, 63, with curves as deliberate as her perfume, and a fire in her that never once considered going out. She lived on the second floor, in a light-filled apartment with lace curtains and hardwood floors that remembered every step of every secret. Just beneath her lived her tenant, Paul. He had moved in 2 months earlier, a 23-year-old from a small town somewhere in central Massachusetts. Said he'd come for work, something about a tech internship. Elaine remembered how he'd looked that first day. Tall, lean, muscles carved like stone, carrying a duffel bag and an apologetic smile. His skin the color of polished espresso, close-cropped hair, a jaw that looked like it could split granite, and eyes. Those soft, deep-set eyes that couldn't quite meet hers for too long. He was confident, yes, but there was a touch of shyness she found. Delicious. He paid on time. 2 months, clean. Said ma'am, and thank you. Carried his groceries in one arm like he was in a fitness commercial. Elaine didn't bother hiding her stares when she passed him on the stairs. She'd linger in her doorway, letting her silk robe fall just enough to say something without a single word. But the 3rd month came. No rent. He knocked on her door, hat in hand, voice low. "I'm sorry, Ms. Elaine. I'm still in training at the company. They say in 2 months I'll be on full salary. I just need a little time. I can pay you back all of it. I swear." She tilted her head. "How much time?" He hesitated. "Maybe 2 months?" She gave him 1 week, a full 7 days to sort things out. She was firm, but kind. He nodded, clearly ashamed. 1 week later, no envelope, no money. That night, the hallway smelled of warm rain and jasmine. Elaine walked down the steps in a robe thinner than breath, tied lazily at her waist. Nothing underneath but perfume and nerve. She knocked gently on Paul's door. He opened it slowly, shirtless, eyes blinking in confusion. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, stepping inside before he could answer. His apartment was tidy. He backed up, nervous, lips parting like he wanted to say something, but no words came. Elaine closed the door behind her, turned to face him and smiled. "You still don't have it?" she asked. He shook his head. "I'm sorry. I really..." She stepped closer. "I think we can work something out." Paul frowned slightly. "Like what?" She didn't speak, just reached up and let her fingertip trail along the base of his neck, then up, slowly, to his jawline. His breath caught. "You're a beautiful man, Paul," she whispered. He stood frozen, but his eyes were wide, fixed on her mouth. He didn't move when she stepped even closer, chest to chest, her hand now resting on his hip. Her voice was low, smoky. "You can stay," she said. "But you're going to have to give me something worth keeping." He didn't answer, didn't run. He just leaned in, cautiously at first, then with hunger. Their mouths met like waves crashing against old stone. Elaine melted into him, his arms wrapped around her back. Her robe slipped open. His hands, warm and trembling, slid along her waist. It was supposed to be one kiss. It became a fire, and the night had only just begun. Elaine didn't expect him to be so hungry, so sure. His lips moved down her neck, soft at first, then deeper, pressing against her skin like he'd been waiting for this since the day he moved in. His hands gripped her hips with just enough pressure to make her gasp. Her robe was gone, crumpled on the floor like it had never mattered. They didn't speak. There was nothing to say. Paul lifted her like she weighed nothing, carried her to the couch with a strength that sent shivers through her. She ran her fingers across his back. Hard muscle, warm skin. His body trembled beneath her touch. But he never hesitated. The way he kissed her. It wasn't like a boy desperate to prove himself. It was like a man discovering something rare. Her body responded to him like a match to flame. He explored every inch of her with reverence and heat, his mouth trailing paths across her collarbone, her stomach, her thighs. She arched beneath him, not in surprise, but in surrender. He kissed like he wanted to remember her taste forever. Hours slipped past like silk. The night was thick with breath, movement, heat. She whispered his name again and again, her nails digging into his back, her legs tangled with his. There was no guilt in her heart, only rhythm, only fire. When it was finally over, they lay tangled together on the couch, bodies bare, breath slow. Elaine rested her head against his chest. His heart was racing. He brushed his fingers along her spine, like he couldn't believe what had just happened. She turned her face up to look at him. "You're not sleeping in that empty apartment tonight," she said, voice husky. Paul smiled, nervous, boyish, sweet. "No, ma'am," she laughed. "Stop calling me that." "Okay, Elaine." That name had never sounded more alive, Ijay. In the morning, sunlight spilled across the floor. Elaine woke first. She slipped out of his arms and into the kitchen, throwing on one of his shirts that hung long on her. The smell of coffee filled the air. When Paul walked in, shirtless again, hair wild from sleep, he looked at her like she was some kind of miracle. She handed him a mug. "Breakfast?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Can I help?" She gave him a look, playful. "You helped plenty last night." He laughed, almost shy again. "I meant with the food." He made eggs while she leaned against the counter, sipping coffee and watching him move. Every flex of his arm, every turn of his shoulders, made her ache in places she thought had gone quiet years ago. They ate together in her kitchen, bare legs brushing under the table. He looked at her with that same mix of admiration and disbelief. She could see it all over him. He hadn't planned this either. But now that it was happening, neither of them wanted to step back. Later, he kissed her again in the doorway. Gently, slowly, his hands at her waist. The kind of kiss that said thank you and more. Please, all at once. That evening, she heard a soft knock at her door just before sunset. She opened it, already smiling. Paul stood there with a small bag in hand. "I figured maybe I'd sleep here again." She stepped aside, her robe already tied loose. "I was hoping you would." They didn't waste time. This time it was faster, deeper. The kind of passion that comes when you already know each other's rhythm. Their bodies remembered. Her hands found his shoulders again. His mouth found her neck like it was home. He was all over her. She was all over him. And this time, it didn't feel like a trade. It felt like the beginning of something real. By the third night, they stopped pretending it was about rent. Paul didn't bring excuses anymore. Elaine didn't ask questions. When the sun dipped low over the brick buildings of Boston, painting the skyline gold, he simply walked up the stairs and knocked. She didn't bother tying her robe tightly anymore. She opened the door slowly, letting him take her in from the very first second. Each night, the tension returned like a tide. Familiar, addictive. He barely made it past the threshold before his hands found her waist. His lips found hers. She'd gasp as he pushed her gently against the wall, lifting her effortlessly. Their mouths crashed together, hungry and knowing, her legs wrapped around him. He carried her to the bedroom with that same quiet strength she craved. The nights were different now, deeper. Elaine started noticing the small things. How he'd rest his hand on her stomach when she slept, or how he laughed softly whenever she teased him in the kitchen, wearing nothing but his shirt. He began leaving things in her apartment, a hoodie draped over her chair, a toothbrush beside her mirror. In the early mornings, he cooked for her, scrambled eggs, buttered toast. Nothing fancy, but the way he moved around her kitchen made it feel like home. She'd sit at the table in one of his t-shirts, sipping coffee and admiring the view. Not of the skyline, but of him. The way his body moved, the little furrow in his brow when he was focused, the way he smiled at her like she was the only woman in the world. One afternoon, he texted her from work. "I miss you." That word, miss, hit different. She wasn't a girl anymore. She knew what that meant, knew what it didn't. But she texted back anyway. "Come over when you're done. I'll be waiting." And she was. That night, she wore a silk slip that clung to her like moonlight. He walked through the door, dropped his backpack to the floor, and wrapped his arms around her like he couldn't breathe without touching her. No words. They moved together like they'd been doing this for years. Each kiss landed with purpose. Each touch made her skin spark. He undressed her slowly, hands trembling with something more than desire. Their bodies melted together on the bed like they belonged there. She whispered his name, not because she had to, but because it tasted sweet on her lips. Later, they lay tangled in each other. Paul's fingers traced small circles on her thigh. Her cheek rested against his chest. Outside, the city buzzed and moved without them. "Are you okay?" he asked suddenly. She looked up. "Why wouldn't I be?" He shrugged, eyes on the ceiling. "I don't know, just... I know I'm younger. I don't want to mess anything up." Elaine smiled, slow and soft. "Sweetheart, if this is what messing up feels like, I don't want anything fixed." He kissed her forehead, pulled her closer. By the end of the week, he had moved almost everything upstairs. Quietly. No announcement. No need. Her husband? Gone. 2 years now. A detail Paul never asked about. A shadow that didn't belong in the light they had created. Elaine no longer thought in days. She thought in moments. In heat. In laughter. In the feeling of strong arms pulling her in when she least expected it. She thought in his voice. In the weight of his body above hers. In the way he held her afterward like she was breakable. But she wasn't. She was alive. They never discussed money again. The rent was covered in other ways. And every time she looked at him, his deep brown eyes, his shy grin, the way he kissed her like he couldn't help himself, she knew one thing. She hadn't just let him stay. She had let herself live.